And we are live here at Ishook Comics. And I'm honored to be with the great Graham Nolan and David Boop, editor and comic creators. And of course, my good friend, my new bromance with Ben. I love the guy. He's our head of Ishook Comics, comics editor-in-chief. He's been loyal to our company, loyal to me, to so many ends. And he's the biggest spoiler I ever know. But we made a condition in this show. He will not spoil a few shows. He will not. He has promised 2 shows.
I'm not allowed to talk about Invincible.
Oh, yeah, nothing, no Invincible, none of that stuff. Okay, so anyway, we are here today with Ishook Comics. As you know, I'm an amateur in comics. I have no idea of comics. I knew a little bit, whatever a fan will know with the fan, whatever he's been exposed as in childhood. But the nitty gritty, the details, the ability of understanding comics, we bring the professionals on board. We want to understand and live comics. We want to bring you back. Just like Barnes & Noble has resurrected 60 stores. Let's resurrect the love of comics back again. Anyway, we are here. I'll let Ben open up, go for it, and introduce the great guests that he has brought to us today.
We're excited. We've got 2 wonderful guests here. We've got Graham Nolan. Graham is like DC alumni. He's done so much down there. He's got his own comic company, Compass Comics, did a whole lot across the board. David was saying how he knew who he was and has a bunch of his stuff before we started, Phantom comic strips and all sorts of stuff. So he's established. There's a rumor going on that he had on a long sleeve shirt and he flexed and then it became a sleeveless shirt at an event. He's a tough guy. David, he's also a comic book creator. He currently has a campaign going on with the Green Hornet. It's been out for a minute. Bruce Lee was in the series and everything. So the Green Hornet, I like the nostalgic stuff. I like all the old school stuff in any way. My comic series that I'm working on to come out later, it's in the 70s. So I like things where you didn't know who it was calling on the phone when they were calling like you do now.
So I feel embarrassed a little bit from the opening behind the scenes. I'm with greatness here of great peoples in the names that I've known in my lifetime of growing up. So I apologize, and I'm honored for you guys to be here. Thank you for coming, of course. And I'm going to throw my biggest question to Mr. Nolan. What started your passion to comics?
I was a monster kid before I was a comic kid. I love monsters, monster magazines, monster movies. And then in the 6th grade, my teacher brought in a stack of comic books for the kids to read during recess. And one of them was this Justice League comic. And it just kind of lit a fire under me. I knew a lot of these characters from other media, Superman from the Adventures of Superman, Batman from the Adam West TV series, let's see, Green Lantern, Aquaman from the Superman Aquaman series. So I knew these characters outside of comics. And then when I saw that, it was like, wow, this is really cool stuff. I was already drawing before then. And, but that was the moment. That was that nexus point where I was like, you know what? Somebody is getting paid to do this shit. I want it to be me.
I love that. That's awesome. So passion with incentive money making, right? That's very important. You want to make money with a passion.
Oh yeah, money making is huge. I mean, back when I got into comics in the early 1980s, you didn't get into comics for money. You got into it for passion. But if you could make a living and support your family, that was great. Once royalties started kicking in the mid 1980s, and then when Image broke off, then it became a whole different ball game where people were getting into comics because they were more interested in money than they were in the art form itself.
Wow. And I think that's probably, we have many discussions about this with other comic developers and creators, that when you have the interest of just making money, they just brutalize and destroy the whole IP altogether. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
I do. If there's no passion for it, particularly if you're working on the creation of somebody else, it's one thing if it's your creation and you want to go off in another direction because you're tired of it or you feel like this is going to monetize better. Fine, that's great. But when you're handed something like Batman, let's say, you're a steward, and it behooves you to steward that character in a way that is honoring the creators.
Fully agree. Fully agree. I think if you take away, like for me, if I grew up, and I think it's really what a person does. If you grew up with a certain storyline or a certain base of what you're expecting for that character to be, you don't want that to change. You can modify it, but a full change is disastrous. It turns me off as a fan completely. I don't want to deal. I don't want to watch it anymore. I don't want to even see it anymore because that's not the person I grew up with. That's not the lessons or the teachings that come from that character. Like I think there was one comic that Batman shoots someone, like he betrays his thing where he shoots someone. There was one. I think there was a comic where he shoots somebody. No, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, Batman, when he originally appeared, carried a gun and shot lots of people.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. So that's
No, yeah.
Yeah, because
It
he
was
was
like
based on the
gangbusters,
character the Black Bat. A lot of people don't realize that, but Black
Well,
Bat
the
was
Shadow too. I mean,
Yeah.
he was also based on the Shadow. In fact,
a lot of those pulp characters. But back then the pulp characters had no problem with mowing down mobsters and things like that. So it's not until we get the comics code post World War II that we start pulling back from that. There was too much violence in comics, and we pull back a lot of that, and we get these heroes with these codes of ethics, and only the bad guys kill.
Wow. So who influenced that we should stop with the gun? I mean, because from what we had the last time discussion with Punisher, that Punisher was murdering and killing, and he was able to get away with it. Why all of a sudden that in Batman and his legacy is, oh no, he's going to be a hating guns, he's against guns, like a gun activist, so to speak.
30s or 40s, Benny. It came out it had been out for a while. Punisher came out in, when was it, the 80s? And he was a Spiderman.
70s.
Punisher's a 70s. Oh yeah, he didn't come popular until they brought that limited series of his. And that's
so I'm confused, Ben. What was your point? That it came before
it came
Batman?
Before the comics. Batman was before the comics code. They've had side-by-sides of Gangbuster and Tarzan where they would draw him, and the frames were almost verbatim. They had him with a machine gun, all kinds of stuff. During World War II, he killed Japanese right and left.
Wow.
And so did the Looney Tunes. I mean, everybody did. It was war propaganda stuff.
Well,
but no, they had, what was that corrupting?
That's not exactly true. That's not exactly true. On the covers, that's true. The Batman would be posed with a water cooled machine gun shooting down bad guys. But in the stories itself, early on by the 1940s, Batman did not carry a gun and did not kill. And they made him an honorary member of the Gotham City Police Department. And so that goes early on in the 1940s in the stories where Batman did not kill. When the code came around because in the early 1950s, because of Frederick Wortham and his book Seduction of the Innocent, and he was a psychologist or a psychiatrist that made the claim that juvenile delinquency was exacerbated by comic books, and it was completely bullshit. And but what it did was, it got in front of Congress. And it put comic book companies out of business. It put EC Comics out of business. Fawcett Comics decided to fold. So they gave up Captain Marvel, which was the most popular comic book character of the 1940s. Outsold Superman. The actual comics code is what retarded comics and kept it as an art form from becoming a great adult art form and relegated it to children's literature.
Wow. That's that. I didn't know.
Yeah,
that.
What he said.
Yeah, what he said. Listen, that's why I like asking you the tough questions, or at least some questions. Anyway, so Mr. David.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Tell us about yourself. What started your passion to comics? I mean, what do you feel?
I was thinking back to this, and it's like, I think the first time I ever knew what a superhero was the Electric Company and the Spiderman appearances. Right? Like I'm that many olds. And then I had all the Mego action figures and all of that. I still do in my storage, and stuff like that. But it
I flip too
wasn't
if it's okay.
until
Sorry.
Star Wars that I really started collecting comics, because, you know, obviously Marvel did the Star Wars adaptations and then carried on from their original stories. And back in those days, where I live, we didn't have comic book stores per se. We had a grocery store that had a spinner rack that had bagged comics, 3 comics to a bag. And you could know what 2 of the comics were, but you never knew what that middle one was. It could be anything. It was a wild card. And so I would buy the bags that had the Star Wars comics, and I learned about all of the other comics, the other superheroes, all Marvel. You know, I was mostly a Marvel person. But, you know, the Invaders was a big one that was in there. And Thing 2 for 1 and Marvel Team Up was usually that middle one, the ones they often had trouble selling. You know, and so I learned about a lot of characters, right? Like my love of Man-Thing came from a Marvel Team Up with Spider-Man. And so, yeah, that's really what developed my interest in comics. Later on, I would discover manga, and I got into, you know, Japanese anime and stuff like that. But I continued on still loving a lot of the core. You know, I got into X-Men eventually and jumped on with a lot of series like X Factor, and I went through the whole Inferno thing and so forth. And of course, like many people, I watched the Batman series with Adam West. But it wasn't until like much later that I learned about things like pulp characters, the ones that inspired the other characters. And I got interested in that. And that's kind of where I am right now, as I'm doing a lot of pulp. So, yeah.
Wow. Love it. Love it. Love it. It's awesome. I like to hear like the base of why everybody does these comics in general. I mean, but when you create comics, and I'm sure anyone can chime in whenever they want, all, you know, after all 3 of you, how do you define what moral lessons you want to present in the comic? Because obviously every story has to have some sort of lesson. It can't be.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, it doesn't. Just killing.
Every story has to be entertaining, period.
But no lessons. No lessons at all.
No, it can have lessons if it's entertaining, but it doesn't have to. What it has to be is entertaining.
So the ones that don't have lessons, let's compare with what has lessons and what has no lessons. Which
Breaking
one sells
Bad.
better, and which one succeeds better? And
I want to add to that a little bit. All right.
Okay.
So when you do critical analysis of any art, right, one of the things that you break down is what is the purpose of the creator for the audience, right? And that can be broken down into 3 categories: entertainment, education, and enlightenment, right? Mm-hmm. And every piece of art has elements of this. You can have something that's educational, has a moral in it. You can have something that's enlightened, that tries to raise the consciousness of the reader, right? And of course, you can have entertainment. And you look at everything that's created from these aspects, right, is how much entertainment, how much education, and how much enlightenment. It doesn't mean that every issue is going to be always entertaining, right? We take X-Men, or maybe it was the New Mutants, God Loves, Man Kills, right?
I love that.
Yeah,
love it.
It's an entertaining graphic novel, but it is also very enlightening. It's also educational, but it is also entertaining. And you go, well, what's the percentage of each one in that when we are critically analyzing them? So everything has these elements, at least in my opinion. And so, you know, when you say, you know, what do we put in there? Well, it depends. What's the story that we want to tell today, right? Gotcha. Fearful Symmetry with Spiderman, right? Again, entertaining, but also very enlightening, right? There's a lot we learn about Peter Parker that people have for decades now applied to their own lives and so forth, right? What are you willing to do to protect the people you love,
No doubt.
right?
I mean,
And-
you know the manga Naruto, right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So what is Naruto's whole message? Never give up.
yeah.
So technically, they don't have to put any more lessons. It's all about never give up, right?
Right, but within there, there's also lessons of things like brotherhood, love, camaraderie,
Consistency in what you're doing.
yeah,
I've never
one of the
watched
big
an
ones.
episode of
But
Naruto. You all just have at it.
without entertainment being the forefront of those things, then they become pedantic. They become preachy.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
And they lose the message. If you have a message, you lose it because all of a sudden you're slapping the person in the face with it. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby managed to put all kinds of interesting stuff, social messages perhaps, but never at the expense of entertainment. It's like the original Star Trek series. It explored all kinds of concepts and but never going outside the storyline of entertaining you first.
I love that.
But
I
there
love
are
that.
there
I
are
love it.
exceptions to that too. Like there's exceptions to every rule. Like you take Mouse, right? For example.
Mouse isn't a commercial comic. We're
Okay.
talking about commercial art. You
Okay.
know,
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
because you
Well,
have one job
right.
when you work for a company: sell as many comics as possible, and you have to do that on the back of it being entertaining.
Right.
Anything else you can put in on the side, that's great. You know, if you're doing something on your own as a personal journey or personal experience, like Mouse, whole other experience, whole other discussion. Yeah,
That's valid.
By the way,
Yeah.
I love what you said, Mr. Nolan. That's unbelievable because people lose sight in that, right? Like if there's a special person like me who's a business person who wants to put money in comics to make money also, but I also want to get them at whatever storyline you want to get, I want to get it out there. But anyone who comes and approaches me says, "Oh, I want you to help maybe sponsor or promote this comic," I would say, "No, you got to follow what Mr. Nolan said." That I'm happy that you said it because the reality is there's a commercial. You need to commercialize it.
Right.
That's the only way you're going to succeed. And
Right.
the entertaining part has to be the prime of your production, the prime of your comic.
The
You can
last
throw a few-
last Airbender on Netflix has lots of social commentary in it. But first and foremost, it's about a kid who's trying to learn how to master all these powers, and that's very entertaining because there's lots of foibles involved with it.
So let's take that example, for example, the Airbender. So you had the movie The Airbender, which didn't do so well.
Anime
Right?
The
before
first
that.
one, correct?
Yeah, the first one. And then you have the Netflix series. Why?
Anime before that.
Well, anime was very successful.
Yeah,
That's
It
why
was
they did the
awesome.
movie.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it was an amazing storyline. It was
Yeah.
beautiful. It was amazing. I don't know why they stopped anime, but for some reason, the movie didn't make it well.
No,
But
first
the
one,
Netflix series all of a sudden made it well. They already, I think, contract 2 more seasons thereafter.
Yeah.
Why, in your opinions, why do you think that happened? Is it because they messed up entertaining, or they didn't do it the right, or they weren't proper with the story? What happened there?
if you don't mind, I'll throw it in. It was too big of a story to try to fit in a 2-hour film. It was they made some choices, especially in casting, that people didn't agree with, but also really you're talking about a very complex story that played out over, I don't know how many episodes the first season was, 26 or so.
Of
You
what?
just-
No, of the anime or of the?
Yeah, of the anime.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you just can't cram that into a 2-hour film. We love The Shining as a movie with Jack Nicholson, right? But then they do the limited series with
The dude from Wings.
Steven.
Yeah.
And they could expand on the story that it's more like the actual book. And it was also very successful, right? And they've done that with several of King's adaptations. When you're, and I've done film adaptation and stuff like that. When you're doing that, the picking and choosing of things cannot be arbitrary. They have to be very, very specific.
Sure.
And when the studios get their hands on things, they become much more arbitrary. A TV series, you get to make a lot more decisions to keep stuff in that maybe helps build character and less on plot, right? In a movie, you got a lot of plot and not as much time to do characterization, right? And you got all that action you got to fit in and special effects and all of that. You got time with a TV series to develop some of that.
That's good. And you mentioned King. Are you looking forward to it? Welcome to Derry, the series. Have you heard of that? Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've heard of it. You know,
You're not an
I'm
it
not
guy?
a what I don't know what they call King fans, King, you know,
I don't even know.
Kingians or something. I don't know.
It terrorized me as a kid.
I've never been
Derry.
a huge King fan. I respect the guy. I've read his books on writing. He's a master at what he does. But my interests lie elsewhere. I'm not a big King. I did love his adaptation of the Colorado Kid, the adaptation they did of the Colorado Kid, which was a fun series.
Are you going to watch
really
Noir
nobody knows
Spider-Man?
about. What's that?
Are you going to watch Noir Spider-Man? You said that you're watching the.
Oh yeah, are you kidding?
I am.
I am
fired up
in
about
for
that.
a penny, in for a pound.
Yes.
Fabrice Sabloski, who is one of the co-creators of Spider-Man Noir, is a friend of mine, and yeah, love him, love Noir. If we were at my house, I could show you all of the Spider-Man Noir figures I have. I don't have them here. I have Green Hornet figures here because I'm promoting Green Hornet. So
Can I ask Miss Nolan a question about the green? Another question about the Airbender. Is it possible that the reason why the movie failed was because the comic was so successful and people were used to the long form storytelling, and then they make a movie which is very short form? So imagine if they did not make that long form anime, that movie would have probably been very successful because it's the first introduction of that story. Am I making sense with what I'm saying or no?
You are, but the other side of that is it wouldn't have had an audience because the audience was already built in from the long form storytelling of the anime.
Wow.
So that audience
Touché.
was disappointed by the fact that it was truncated in a movie. You know, it's like John Carter. You know, if you were a Burroughs fan and you read all the John Carter novels, they bastardized a bunch of different books to put into this movie and tried to tell this giant story, and they end up with a hot mess. You add the horrible marketing of it by calling it John Carter, which could very well be about an accountant, and not calling it, you know, Warlord of Mars or Princess of Mars.
Princess of Mars, yeah.
Yeah. You know, I think Warlord of Mars would have been cooler. I mean, that implies some action, you know. So I, you know, I think a lot of these, you know, Hollywood people, you know, they think they try to put too much into a movie, and they lose all the nuance of the original concept.
So honestly speaking, I love the John Carter movie because I never was introduced to the storyline.
The
right?
books are amazing. I love the movie.
Now I'm probably going to buy the books.
It was a fine movie.
They're
The movie did what it was supposed to storytelling wise. It introduced a character that they plan to make a lot of movies about, which of course we will not get now.
They introduced a bad character that nobody wants to see again. That's the problem with that, with that movie.
Did you all think that they intentionally made the princess look like Donald Trump's wife?
What's
I don't
that?
remember how
Melania.
That was made in what, 2000?
You don't think that she was like fixed up to look like Melania? I'm just curious because
how that was way before Donald Trump was around.
I don't.
And again, don't mention Trump because I can't promote the videos after.
Quit saying his name. I just
You guys
said
can't
Don't
stop
say it
saying
3
his name.
times. Don't
Oh
say
my
it 3
God.
times.
Trump. I love it.
I love
You
the
shall not
problem
be-
is YouTube, when I try to promote YouTube videos, right, through
Quit
YouTube
saying his
itself,
name,
they
Benny.
say right away your video, and it's almost half of the comic things that we're doing. It says your video is election promotions, and I get screwed. Because everybody wants to talk about politics too.
No,
And I
they
get
don't.
us
Stop saying
I'm
his name.
fine not talking about politics.
Yeah, let's not.
Yeah.
Don't mention even his name. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's listen. It doesn't matter what we feel about him, right? Whether for good or for
He
bad.
doesn't
It
want to
doesn't
get
matter.
blacklisted.
I don't want to
Benny's
get
paranoid about getting
blacklisted.
blacklisted.
No, we're not going to get blacklisted, but I can't promote that after.
Shadow banned.
We get shadow banned. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm not going to get shadow banned. That's for sure not.
Yeah.
Yeah. They already tried to shadow ban something on me, but I think it was anti-Semitic anyway. All right.
Yeah.
Go. So now getting to the other points. I mean, how does a person who starts in the comic industry, like we're trying to start, right? Ishook is trying to get to Ishook Comics and try to move ourselves and, you know, the play. We want to also promote others, sell other people's products too on our site. We're working on making it much better than it is now. But in general, how does a person start? I mean, obviously you need money to start, right? Like that's not even a question,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Well,
you
yeah,
need money.
it's the old adage: how do you make $1 million in the comic industry? You start with 2 million.
That was a good one. That was a good one. But let's say you don't have $2 million, right? But let's say you don't have $2 million. What's the minimum amount for 48? Well, okay, maybe it's how much? What's the average comic? 24 pages, or let's say graphic
22
novels,
pages.
like 22 pages. Okay.
No,
So
20,
what is the average?
20. It used to be 22. Marvel and DC now their actual page count is 20.
Oh, really? So they
Yeah,
dropped
that's
2
the actual
pages.
story. Yeah, that was years ago. They dropped it almost 20 years ago down to 20
It's like
pages.
the Hershey
22.
bar. It just keeps getting smaller.
And is there a reason why they dropped it?
Cost.
But didn't the old comics used to have advertisement in those pages?
They still have the advertisement.
Oh, so
They're
they just
just
dropped 2
giving you less
pages without.
content.
Yeah, less content, more
okay.
advertisement.
So there's
You have to
so
understand that every
technically
Marvel
speaking,
comic, every Marvel comic is an advertisement for a Marvel film or TV series, right? So within those pages now, they have more pages saying, you know, tune into Disney Plus for this Marvel thing or that Marvel movie or whatever, right?
well, what's that? So let me understand this. So technically speaking, you have the front cover, the back cover, and 2 pages of advertisement from a 20-page book. So technically, you only have 16 pages of content in a comic.
No, you
No.
have 20 pages of content. You have 32 pages of comic of
the whole thing.
of the magazine.
Oh, okay. Now I'm understanding. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a 32-page print, right?
Yeah, it used to be. I'm not sure. I haven't bought one in a long time, but
I have.
typically that's true.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've covered Gail Simone's X-Men run. She's done nice with it and all that. She's been sweet to me. We met in Maryville. That's not far from me. She was signing stuff there.
Yeah, and of course,
So what will be the cost? I'm sorry. So what will be that cost?
Graham's talking about, of course, is you know, the big guys, the Marvel, DC. Indies have a little bit more room to play. The comic I'm having coming out later this year that I did with Kevin J. Anderson, we ended up with an odd number of pages because, you know, once they got the script and the artist started working on it, he was like, I want to do a splash page with this instead of, you know, a single page as you had laid out. So it ended up with an odd number of pages, but then they'll fill that with advertisements for other comics or other things that they're doing. So, but yeah, indies have a little bit more flex room because they're not as dependent on, you know, the sales as Marvel and DC are.
Well,
So,
my books are there's no ads. There are 64 pages of content, 72 pages total, and those extra 8 pages are extras. You know, back sketches, cover sketches. You know, backstory stuff.
the masthead. Sometimes there's a masthead page. You know, it really depends. So,
Yeah, well, yeah. These are all the things that I put into my books. I have 12-point cardstock covers, spot UV on the covers with a matte finish. I have what's called perfect bound, so you have a square bound and you're not saddle stitched. You know, and those books when I crowdfund them are $25 a pop, and that sounds like a lot, right? But when you actually do the math and you take a Marvel comic, which is what, $4.99, $5.99, you know,
if you're lucky.
If you're lucky, right? And you're only getting 20 pages, and you're on 65-pound page with 65-pound cover stock, and you got ads. When you price out per page of content, you're paying the same amount for my book, but you're getting a much better package, and you're also getting you're also getting much more story.
I didn't know there were 65. That's interesting. I didn't know there were.
By the way, listen, I love what he's saying. I mean, this is like nuevo information. I love learning from, people's of the trade. It's beautiful.
So
this is, by the way, this is why I started Ishook Comics with Ben. I said, I gotta learn.
Graham,
this is learning 101 here. Go ahead.
What do you do? Are you 70, 80, 100? What do you do for the cover and for the pages typically?
The pages, well, like this is, let me give you an example. This is like, it's called 12 point C2S.
Yeah.
So it's two-sided 12 point cover stock. Very heavy. The interior is 72 pound stock. Okay.
Gloss
beautiful.
Obviously, we have a square bound cover or square bound binding on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I always coat my covers with a matte finish so that you don't have all that glare. And then the glare here is the spot varnish.
Mm-hmm.
So, you've got this feel to this thing. So it feels like you have something worth value. The back is a matte finish as well. When you hold it, there's a velvety feel to it. And when you read the interior pages, there's very little glare because it's not a high gloss finish. It is a matte coating in there, so you can see just a slight glare. But if you were to read this on a chaise lounge in the sun, you wouldn't be like this, like you would on a Marvel comic trying to read it because of all the glare. That drives me nuts.
Yeah, I also hate it. I love matte finishes, by the way, or semi-satin, it's also
that's exactly same thing. It's a satin finish. Yeah,
right, but it's like 50%, not the full satin, because the full satin is close to the glare, right? I used to do printing, so I know paper and everything, right?
Right.
So definitely. But for sure, that production I think is more valuable than a regular comic. I don't understand why everyone does the regular comics anyway. Just do that and you'll sell more. No,
right? Well, you don't have to sell as many.
Right, that's also true.
I mean,
the quantity of sales are less, but higher margins of profit.
Well, and Mr. Nolan has the ability to, he's got such a fan base that, when he does put up a social, like a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo and stuff like that, he's got a built-in group of people who are very much looking forward to the next thing he's doing. Right. Which, is great. It's awesome.
Well, let me just edit out a little bit there, David, because I did a Kickstarter with Chuck for the first Joe Frankenstein book back in 2015. We had just come off DC and we thought our names were going to carry it. Oh, we'll bring our fan base over. We're going to freaking, crowdfund this Kickstarter. It's a new thing. We didn't do shit. I mean, it didn't crowdfund enough to pay for itself.
What do you think caused that? Do you think that 2015 was still an untamed territory for social media and things like that? Do you think that nowadays, if you had done that same thing, you would have?
No, I don't, because I learned a lot from it. Because your name doesn't really mean a lot in the crowdfunding community. What's important is having a presence in social media, particularly on YouTube. I've found that when you're broadcasting and stuff, you get people to fall in love with you. They're willing to try your product.
Okay.
And it goes back to Stan Lee. Stan Lee made everybody fall in love with Stan Lee, and as a result, buy Marvel Comics. And that has not changed. By
the way, you're so right. I look up to Stan Lee. I admire Stan Lee.
You have to get out there. You have to promote and be passionate about your work, but you have to be out there and reach out to people, because there's so many people. Betty here, he doesn't know who the hell I am. He doesn't. He hasn't read comics. But that's the guy right there. I want to get to buy one of my books.
Benny buys books.
Who's never?
By the way, I buy a lot of books. But I'm trying to get into the comic industry. But side point, Stanley did even another thing that was even better, and that's why I also watched the MCU in the beginning, where he was cameo into and that was the beauty when he was he was doing the what do you call it? He was one of those vendors, those street vendors, and serving food. All these small cameos was what brought a lot of people to watch those movies as well. Besides the point, because of his recognition and because, like you said, he built himself to that level.
Okay, you want to talk about a crazy multiverse? Are you ready for this? Some of you might know this. I don't know if our audience does or not.
All right.
But here's a multiverse for you. Hugh Hefner actually started in comics. He wanted to be, he and Stan Lee started right around the same time. And think about a multiverse where Stan Lee goes on to create Playboy and Hugh Hefner goes on to create Marvel Comics, right?
I don't even want to think about that. That's too, what do you call it? That's too like this is like one extreme, and he went through like a more kosher venue. What's it?
Yeah, no, but when I watched a Hugh Hefner documentary one time, I was like, oh my God, my mind is blown thinking about Hugh Hefner being Stan Lee.
Well, his number one, Hugh Hefner's number one Playboy cartoonist was Jack Cole, and Jack Cole was a creator of Plastic Man.
Wow.
You look up Jack Cole Playboy cartoons. Absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, I don't know if I can show that line. Yeah.
No,
yeah,
but this is 1950s Playboy.
Oh,
yeah,
okay. So
very different.
Very different.
Very
okay.
different. He would do creative stuff like have this older guy, like 50-year-old guy with a pot belly, laying on the beach with his wife, 50-year-old, kind of dowager looking, and some hot little tomato sitting on a beach blanket in a bikini, right? And the guy's hand is up like this, and his shadow is reaching over to her butt.
Oh,
that's so beautiful.
Right. So it's more I guess hinting, not necessarily actual.
Right.
Yeah. It wasn't about, it was really more about, the battle of the sexes, so to speak, as opposed to,
and this is why we had comics in Playboy for so long, and why the best-selling or best-paying market for science fiction was Playboy for the longest time. Like when they talk about when you're a new author, right, and you've written short fiction, you send it to the highest paying market first, and then when you get the rejection from there, you just start working your way down until somebody buys it, right? In this particular case, Playboy was always at the top of that when I first got into publishing, right? I never sent anything to them, but a lot of my friends are like, yeah, I want a rejection from Playboy, because if I do get a short story sold there, that pretty much establishes me, right? Not only from a pay standpoint that I can sell at pro level, but the audience is ridiculous, right?
So basically they bought the audience, let's say in a kosher venue, in a kosher aspect, right? More, more professional aspect. And then they converted what they were doing because they knew they were not going to lose their audience.
Market trends, things change. So
wow. Yeah. Well, also technology's changed. You had to draw a lot back then. You didn't have like InDesign or Photoshop and all that stuff. Even the cameras weren't the same. Like a lot of these old books, they had to have actual artists draw out certain material. And now you have it all digitized. With now AI, it's even much easier in so many ways. Yeah,
but,
definitely.
To carry over what Mr. Nolan was saying about social media, yeah, it is important. This Kickstarter I'm doing right now for the Green Hornet 90th anniversary anthology, right? I'm posting on 6 different social medias every day, right? Like I'm on them all, posting, often the same thing, but putting different tags to try to capture different audiences. But, I'm on the TikTok, I'm on the YouTube, I'm on the Facebooks and the Instas and the Threads and all of the things, right?
And they're not the way they used to be either.
Yeah. And that takes, time out of other things I could be doing, writing, editing, whatever, right? It's a job in itself. And some companies have people who do this for them, or, they have a child who, is good with the internet, could do it for them. Free labor, child labor, still valid in America. So yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of work you have to do, especially, even if you don't have brand recognition, But even when you do have brand recognition,
Wow, I can't believe this is still a problem, because in 2015 we presented in Book Expo, our company Ishook, and we presented in the UK book fairs. We presented a lot of book fairs in 2014, 15, and 16. And every author said this problem, that they cannot publish and create books at the same time, become a marketer of their books. It's very difficult. It's not that easy. It's extremely difficult. Wow, I can't believe it's still even existing now.
It's difficult, but you can do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've raised, since I started on Indiegogo in 2020, I've raised $1,123,314 for my projects.
Wow.
But what's your social media presence? How many followers you have on YouTube, let's say?
Like 10,000 on YouTube. No, not on YouTube. On YouTube, I think it's like 5,000, something like that. But you go on other people's shows that have bigger markets.
Right.
That's true. Yeah. Like all the shows that we do now, I promote. Like I promoted Chuck Dixon's. Was it Chuck Dixon or was it someone else? And we got 20,000.
Chuck Dixon got you more views than anybody else that you had ever had. Benny was like doing a jig over it. He was excited.
Yeah, because what happened was, listen, you can promote and you will never have the advertisement promotion. Like I tell people, people say, oh, but you're not organic. I'm like, why do I have to be organic? When we used to do businesses, you know what we used to do? We used to pay for flyers. We used to then pay a person to give out flyers to get into the store. Why should me, with my social medias, be any different? I'm paying for flyers to get people into my store, to know who I am, and to follow me. And if they follow me, if I get a 5% conversion, that's a very high conversion on Instagram, for example. Right? That's huge conversions. And then on YouTube, we did one Chuck Dixon advertisement. I'm not going to say how much. It was very little, below $1,000, let's say. For sure below 1,000. 20,000 views almost. Let me just make sure it's the Chuck Dixon video 1 second. But it was
that would make sense. Yeah.
20,000 videos, right? I made 20,000 views, hundreds of hours worth of listening time, right? And on top of that, we got over 4,000 more subscribers. You understand? This is the world that we have to live in today.
That's right.
You got, and there's no way to change it. And and I feel that a lot of good friends like that Ben has with who are defranchised in the social media realm. So I said, listen, I know social media, but I don't know comics. Let's start doing a comic segment, right? And that's what we're doing. And I think that's how and I used to call this in 2015. I called it collaborative social media. We're collaborating with each other with our social media presences in order to succeed, right? And that's really what's happening, and that's really what we have to start doing as a community in comics. Because Ben and I, and thank you to Ben and others who helped, that we're in the community little by little. And that's the whole shtick. We want to make sure that everybody succeeds in their IP. Because I think these IPs potentially can have a lot of success points. By the way, I don't know if you know, we're also creating a Roblox game. We want to try to license characters too in our Roblox game and our development for the whole Roblox gaming industry. Because gaming is very strong and it's very quick to get your IPs recognized in these games as characters alone itself. So side point, that's why I tell everybody that's another, I think, niche that you guys can get for your projects out there. Side point. Go ahead. Any
I was going to ask Graham. So, man, I watched this video, and I don't want to go into a big spiel about the other company and all that. It's Rippaverse, but somebody was talking about how they have their own universe and everything, and they're like, you know who the other person is that did that in indie comics? And they said it was you, Graham. That you've got like your own internalized universe and all that. Do you have any comment regarding that?
Well, I started off to create when I decided I was going to go off on my own and create, under Compass Comics, my own world. I told you I was a monster kid. And so I decided I was going to focus all my books in this horror, monster, sci-fi, supernatural genre, and not do superheroes. I played in that sandbox for 40 years. And DC and Marvel have that locked down. I figured, well, I'll try and do something a little bit different. I launched in 2020 during the pandemic. And whenever there's bad things happening, whether it's a pandemic or it's financial crisis, horror is bulletproof. It always does well because people need entertainment. So I figured, well, that was the way to go for me. And so that's how I started building out my world. It was going to be horror based and also high adventure based.Ose two together, and I wanted to it's so funny how this stuff happens organically. I didn't sit down and map it out like I've got this and this. You know, I started with the Shinu, and it was just a straight up horror tale. Rated R, claustrophobic horror tale. And then I didn't have an ending for it. And I decided I would take my dog for a walk, and then I came up with this idea. I'm like, oh, what if this? What if this? And that opened up the door for my universe to expand. And then I was able to tie that in with Joe Frankenstein. And then that became the focus of the universe, because he had an organization which I had already established called the Lazarus Corps. And his tentacles are all throughout the world, his corporations. And so I can have all these characters interacting with with these corporations and stuff, and then have these individual storylines going on that aren't necessarily connected, but it's clear that they're in the same world, because of references. And I've just been having a ball doing that. I'm not creating this world building thing in a planned way, but it's happening more organically. As I develop these new characters, I'm like, well, how would this fit in? And I'm just like, whoop, boom, there's a hole. I'll plug this right here. That's the fun for me, is to do it on the fly.
I like that. I like that a lot. And I agree with you. I'm like a horror guy. The things that I like, they're all like violent and everything. My wife, not so much. So I try to like slip in things that are like less violent, nasty horror. We watched The Watchers, M. Night Shyamalan, last night and all that. And, his stuff, it doesn't get too bad or anything. And it's always got a twist. And it was nice. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that one. No.
Right.
No, but I do want to see it. It looked good.
It is nice.
When I fell in with Moonstone, one of the nice things about what they do is they have a combination of licensed IPs as well as public domain characters that nobody renewed the license, or the license expired or whatever. So what you get is you get the ability to make a kind of shared universe because these characters all were created around the same time. So you take the Black Bat, like I said, earlier, could be one of the progenitors of Batman. And you can put him with somebody like the Domino Lady, which is a story that I co-wrote with another author. And Domino Lady, a character, one of the first.
Was that Bobby?
What's that?
Was that Bobby that you did that with?
No, actually that one I did with Josh Vogt. I've edited Bobby, but I haven't written with him yet. He's
okay. Bobby's awesome. He never stops. He's always
about who is a guy, one of the hardest working guys in the industry. He is ridiculous. I see him every year at Dragon Con. He's just amazing. Anyway, so you can cross over some of these characters and create a shared universe. At one point, Moonstone did with the late C.J. Henderson, the Battle for L.A., where they brought in almost every single character that they had published to date for this big aliens invade L.A. sort of thing. And it was a great graphic novel. So as far as shared worlds go, yeah, sometimes it just happens, right? Like you don't even have a plan, but things, just suddenly appear, right? Wow. And I've worked with a couple of different shared worlds in the past that are, like you said, they're a lot of fun because you get to drop in references and so forth.
So ultimately, creating a video game will create a shared world almost automatically, right?
It depends. I mean, if you're Mortal Kombat does that though.
Mortal Kombat does a great. They do a great with DC and also now with Marvel. They're already
Krueger, Jason, Michael Myers.
Yeah, I mean, if you're bringing in a lot of different creators and they're all creating and bringing characters into this world, absolutely. Is it a game that you can then say pick up a license for Marvel or anybody else and interject them into your characters? My son played this game, well, still plays it, called Heroescape, and it was its own world. And then all of a sudden, Wizards of the Coast bought it, and Marvel superheroes showed up in it, right? And I'm like, it was all fantasy, high-tech sci-fi, and now all of a sudden we've got the whole.
But you see what they're doing. They're monopolizing in a sense because they're trying to get their tentacles in all these IPs that have success, even Fortnite, and making sure they're still relevant by having their characters there.
Yeah.
I'm hopefully, only God knows, but I'm keeping my word. I don't want to bring any MCU or DC into my IPs. I want to have all independent IPs involved, because then you're never going to be able to compete with these big players. If they're going to always put their tentacles into your IP, you're done. You lost,
Ben Dunn over at Antarctic Press is doing some really fun stuff with Shared World. He's been bringing in a lot of indie producers who produce American manga or superhero type characters and crossing them over and so forth. And he's been doing really good work with that. Ben's pretty amazing.
Well, even DC is doing a manga. They did a manga of what's it called? Of what is the show? I forgot the name. Oh my God, slipped my mind. Where Harley Quinn is? She's in this group.
Suicide Squad Isekai.
Suicide Squad, yeah. So they did the manga version. So they're already trying to get into manga. I mean, there's nothing they're not getting into.
They've already been.
Marvel's done it. Everybody's done it.
No, but they haven't. They never create a manga anime till that one. That's the first Marvel. That's the first DC anime.
Oh, okay.
DC manga anime.
Marvel has had a Wolverine. They've had an X-Men.
No, I meant DC. I misspoke. I meant DC. That's the first DC manga, from what I know.
Yeah.
I want to hear what you were saying about the Spider-Man thing, David. You said that you really like this new thing, and I have watched things that people criticize that I think different of. So, like Kraven, I think that Kraven, the movie, that the character works alone based on what he is. That he's somebody that hunts down trophy targets, so he doesn't necessarily need a Spider-Man. They went their own way with the Rhino, but I thought that it was fine for a standalone movie. It wasn't like the best movie I've ever seen, but it was better than a lot. It was okay. But you said that you think that the Spider-Man is like true to life or
yeah. So this new Disney Plus series, the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, the thing I'm really captured by it is the idea that it's very grounded in reality, as much as a superhero story can be grounded in reality, right? But we have an adage in writing, which is you have to sell them on your reality before you sell them on your fantasy, right? If the reality doesn't work, then the fantasy isn't going to work, right? You can't start with the fantasy. You have to start with real characters, with real situations, i.e. very much like Stan Lee and Steve Ditko did with Spider-Man back in the day, right? And this character is so much more grounded in reality than, say, the last couple of Spider-Man animated series, which I enjoyed, Ultimate Spider-Man and so forth. I enjoyed them for what they were. However, this one is just like the characters have so much more depth to them than what I'm used to seeing in a cartoon, right? Peter is struggling on so many different levels, and Spider-Man isn't the fix to them, right? And the other characters, the supporting characters, a lot of them new or deep cuts, a lot of deep cuts in Marvel Comics and so forth. They're taking these characters and giving them real life situations to deal with that, become, everybody's got an arc, right? And when we talk about arcs, we talk about the idea of these characters need to have some moments of transformation. And a lot of them by the end of the first season do, right? And we enjoy them because these characters have become real to us over the course of the 8 episodes, I think it was 8 or 10. And and the animation style is ridiculous. I'm loving it. It feels like, in a lot of ways, a lot of cartoon pages come to life. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. And when we have the idea of the multiverse, the idea of having a black Norman Osborn and Harry Osborn, it doesn't bother me. We still have white Harry Osborn in the comics, right? A female Dr. Connors. Well, we still have a male Dr. Connors, right? Having a female one, having a different perspective with that, to me is fascinating to see these different perspectives. When I edit anthologies, it's all about bringing in different perspectives to explore these characters in new and fascinating ways.
Not just that, it's expanding your IP. Why would you not expand your IP?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, expand your IP to different. I mean, again, you have to have your own personal moral code, how far you expand it.
And the
but at the same
Dr.
time-
Octopus in this series, probably one of my favorites outside of the one from the Amazing or Spider-Man 2 movie. This guy that they got to do Doc Ock is phenomenal. He eats up every scene. He is just wonderful. So yeah, I'm enjoying the hell out of it. I can't wait for second season.
Awesome. So I'm going to give the last. Okay, go ahead, man. Yeah.
I was going to say that. So yeah, you have that, but that's almost like what if, because the problem that I think people have is that the continuity thing. I like the fact that in the new Superman movie that Guy Gardner actually looks like Guy Gardner. He's got the bowl cut, that the characters look like they look in the comic book, because that's one of people's rants, is make them look comic book accurate, make them act like, they want to see the comic book on screen, and maybe there's some things that wouldn't work with, but I mean, I think Stephen King hated his movie The Shining because it wasn't like the book. And I think that there's fans that are like that it's like, I love this so much that I want to see it vomited out onto the screen. Graham, do you have any takes on that?
I agree. You can say you want to expand your IP, but by expanding it, you're taking the blueprint that made it great and you expand upon that. You don't change the recipe. And when you're oh, we're going to do a female Doc Ock, or we're going to do a black Norman Osborn or whatever, you're changing the recipe. I don't think that is creative. I think that actually is lazy. I would rather see new things created to interact with the stuff that made it great. That is. I
see what you're saying. Basically, create a similar type of IP with the different sequences, but don't change your current IP.
Well, no, if you're going to do a Spider-Man series, whatever, and you're going to have Norman Osborn in it, then have Norman Osborn in it. But maybe in the comic books, there's no character called, Jenny Jones. And you create this Jenny Jones character for this series, who is now going to be, maybe she knows Norman's secret. I'm just making this stuff on the fly right now. Just to say that changing their gender, changing their race or whatever is not any way creative. It doesn't do anything for the character. And if you're going to have that character into your storyline, then and you think it needs more, then you create something else to accentuate it. You add spice to it. You put a little garlic in there. You don't take out, the main thing or change.
And I both absolutely 100% agree with you and slightly disagree with you. And I only slightly disagree with you because you're Graham Nolan, and I worship.
Go all in if you want to.
But no, I absolutely agree with you. And for years, that is what I said. Is you don't need to gender swap or change some of these characters, right? You just create a new character that has similar abilities or whatever, right? And you take it in a different direction, right? However, sometimes in the storytelling, it makes sense, right? In this particular case, the idea that a businessman raised up through the ranks from nothing to something in New York could easily be an African American as well as a white man, right? Like a Caucasian. So the idea, this Norman Osborn is one of the deepest written characters I've ever seen for Norman, right? He's written with all of the class and character and story that Norman has always had, but with a little bit of a twist, a little bit of an edge that the other Normans didn't have, and I'm really enjoying that. And then let's talk about, well, what do you do different? Well, if you have a female lizard, for example, Doc Connors is a female, right? Well, how does a female lizard different than a male lizard, right? Like, can the lizard make eggs, right?
But they have
like, you know, I mean,
embryo.
that suddenly becomes a thing, right? Like, okay, so can, you know, are we going to have a lot of little lizardlings running throughout the city, right? We don't know. We don't know where the story is going with that, right? But that does put a twist that allows for some new story writing.
It's a what if, though,
But
right?
with that, they have also created new characters or heightened people who were just like one-offs in various comics previously.
I would like to answer something for you. I want to answer what you're saying. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, it's okay. I think I made my point.
I think the reality is, in a sense, you both can be right, because think about this. In the DC comics, we have Green Lantern, we have Hal Jordan, right? And then we have another Green Lantern who happens to be black, and he happens to be the one who supersedes in popularity to Hal Jordan and the other third Green Lantern, which is going to be the new James Gunn movie, right?
Now, it's a word that you're wanting to use. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
There's
Okay,
nobody
maybe
more popular than Hal Jordan.
Okay, but I'm saying now there's
Thank you,
reports
Graham.
that he's actually the most popular amongst the new
What
whatever. Okay, I'm not going to argue with that. I don't know.
There's
I'm
a
not
Green
gonna-
Lantern for every
Okay,
generation.
But okay, so my point is like Graham said, Mr. Nolan said, there is no swapping of the character. You're introducing a new character. Now with the Norman Osborn thing, why couldn't it be a black person who's a multi-billionaire that buys out a bankrupt Osborn Corp and now inherits all the equipment, and he becomes the new whatever his villain name was, whatever.
Do you
I mean, like,
know-
there could have been so many ways to introduce a new character without killing the character's persona, as opposed to creating a new multiverse. I mean, I'm already tired between me and you, all these multiverses.
Or for the female lizard, how about Doc Connors knocks his wife up and has a kid, and then the kid has got all the lizard abilities, and it's a female.
Yeah, there's many
Now-
ways.
now
They actually did do that.
That's why he's Graham Nolan. That's right.
Yeah. They actually did do that. They actually turned all of Doc Connor's family into lizards. So
Okay, so there you go. So
There we go. Now you have
go.
your female lizard without having to call her Mary Connor or whatever.
Do you know? Okay, so Benny.
So they wanted to go back to a teenage Peter Parker, and if you're going to do that, you either got to make some changes to the continuity, or you take him, like you're saying, many years into the adulthood with these characters that.
No, but they did the multiverse.
Wait,
the whole multiverse did it.
Why, if you're going to go make Peter Parker back into a teenager, why do you have to change continuity? Why do you have to? Because
So
Peter
it
Parker
stands
was
on its
designed he was designed as a high school kid.
Yeah, we've
So-
already had that series. We've had
Right.
that series 3 times now.
Right.
Right?
But you're saying that, okay, we're going back and we got to change it. Well, if you got to go back and change it, why go back?
I like
Well,
the live action 70s Spider-Man series. By the way. I own
Yeah,
it.
and they have brought Nicholas Hammond back a couple of times, which I absolutely love. If you and even that, the Japanese Spider-Man, Spider-Man, they brought back, which I absolutely think is great.
Once they bring the Indian Spider-Man back, then we're really talking. Have you ever
man.
seen those
I've
movies?
never.
Yeah.
Hey, the
Oh my God!
Nick
Well, I want to
Fury.
answer. I want to.
All
Sorry,
right, guys. Last words, because
let me answer his question. Right.
Go ahead.
The audience that appeals to these characters now, because of the Marvel movies, because of this, because of that, right? They are much more diverse than they were in the 70s, in even the early 80s and stuff like that. These characters, these readers want to see more
Of themselves there.
reflected in these characters, right? At least they want to see a more variety. If you have a kid who's going to an inner city school in New York City, there's going to be more diversity in that school these days than maybe in the past, right? So it is logical to think that, let's say, like Batman has always had this effect where the question is, did Batman create the supervillains, or did Batman have to be created because of the supervillains? Peter Parker has that sort of effect. People change around him because he's Spider-Man, right? So if he's around a more diverse cast of characters, it is more likely then that these characters are going to end up with superpowers or become supervillains or whatever, just because of his proximity to them, right? This is the important thing to look at is
but again, if you're changing, I'm sorry for cutting you off again, but if you're changing the diversity factor on a comic like a Spider-Man, as opposed to just creating another comic that caters to that diversity, right?
Miles Morales isn't.
You know what I mean? What's happening is you're disfranchising those who already bought into that comic.
You're destroying the continuity by making.
Let me also say that I grew up in the 60s and 70s and in New York. And my school was very diverse. And this is back when Spider-Man first came out. So the idea that the audience is more diverse now is nonsense.
I love that statement.
They're the same. And if you're trying to create the audience for the Marvel movies, that's a losing battle because there's no correlation. If there was, then the comics would be selling through the roofs right now, and they're not. There's been no crossover from the people that watch the movies that are buying the comics. And that's the problem. The problem is getting the people, and these guys, Marvel and DC, are the biggest offenders of this, is that they're not translating these multi-million-dollar movies into sales into their comic books.
So you don't think Across the Spider-Verse and Into the Spider-Verse helped Miles Morales comic sales, or Gwen Stacy's Ghost Spider's comic sales at all?
What kind of numbers are they selling?
I don't know. I'm not a numbers guy.
No, I think the only benefit they got from it is the gaming, where the Morales game made more money than the regular games.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
Benny, David Hasselhoff will always be Nick Fury in my book.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah, but listen, but once again, but who's the longest standing Nick Fury?
That's how Nick Fury looks. He looks like David Hasselhoff.
That's true, but Samuel L. Jackson is the longest standing Nick Fury so far.
Yeah,
you know, so there's a reason why he has an appeal as a Nick Fury.
And that's one of those things where what you were talking about, Mr. Nolan, is the idea that now Nick Fury had a child with a black woman, and now that person, and named Nick Fury Jr., and now that person's in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever.
Well, that's the way it should be. Why not? That's a great storyline. And you have an expansion of your storyline for the next generation. It makes a continuity on the storyline itself.
But that wouldn't have happened if Samuel L. hadn't played Nick Fury in the movies.
Well,
the black Nick Fury started in the Ultimates first, and then they cast Nick Fury based on that.
Yeah,
so we wouldn't sue them. That was the story.
All right, listen, we gotta cut it off. By the way, we have 24 people watching us live till now so far. Thank God, everybody. Appreciate everybody. I think it's the highest live we got, and it goes.
Questions.
By the way, the live is the hardest thing to do. By the way,
plug their stuff right now, Benny. Before you get up, plug both of their things.
Yeah, I am. Listen, thank you, Ben, for being my assistant. Anyway, 24. Yeah, of course I'm going to plug their stuff. All right, first of all, I want to mention to everybody who's listening to us live, we're here every Thursday night, except for next week. It will be Wednesday night, our next podcast. That usually it's Thursday night, about 6:30 is when we start our live shows. So everybody, please tune in for the next coming. So now, thank you, Mr. Nolan, for coming. You can QR code his information here, his website, his new Kickstarter. Everything is over here. QR code it, scan it. Please support Mr. Nolan. He's a great friend of Ishook Comics now. We appreciate him for coming, and we ask him to come again. As always, we can have a generous conversation like we had now. And he's not closed. He's open-minded. He teaches us how to succeed in this industry, which I love it. Same with Mr. Devin Boop. I appreciate you for coming. He also has his Kickstarter information here. Go on, QR code it. We'll also put every single comic player that has been on Ishook Comics in the description.
So I do have to clarify something with you, Ben, real quick here. So the anthology, the Green Hornet anthology, is not it's not a comic. It's an anthology. It's a prose anthology.
I didn't say anything about
no, that's okay.
That's
okay. I do have a comic coming out later this year. It's giant mechs used as anger management therapy. But so for you monster lovers out there, it's called Travaillant Rising. It's co-written with Kevin J. Anderson. But this anthology is actually prose written by like Timothy Zahn, Kevin J. Anderson, Bill Willingham, Keith DeCandido.
Wow.
Matt Wagner did one of our covers. Dennis Calero, who did some Marvel Noir stuff, does our alternate cover and our interior illustrations. It's up on Kickstarter. We have funded, but we're hitting some other stretch goals. We're looking for bonus Tim Zahn story, the alternate cover by Dennis. But these are amazing stories told from, again, multiple points of view. And it is, our IP is the Green Hornet TV series. So you got the Van William and the Bruce Lee Green Hornet and Kato. And
is this through Moonstone? Is this through Moonstone?
Yeah, this is through Moonstone.
Because they did the same
by the way,
thing with the Lone Ranger. They did the
What's
Lone
that?
Ranger. They did the Lone Ranger as well, which is the great grandfather of the Green Hornet.
Yep. No, cool. Moonstone does a lot of stuff. They just got the Phantom back. So hint, Grant. And they also have like Mandrake the Magician, obviously Green Hornet. They do a lot of old public domains like Black Bat, Domino Lady, Phantom Detective, and so forth. But this anthology is really important. This is the 90th anniversary, right? Next January 21st, 90 years since the Green Hornet debuted on radio, right? So we want to celebrate the Green Hornet this year, right? In all things, right? I think Kevin Smith has some projects with like maybe an animated series and so forth. So we have this great opportunity to show people the characters that inspired all of their characters. I mean, X Factor, right? X Factor started out as a mutant hunting organization that was really protecting mutants. Well, Green Hornet pretends to be a mobster, pretends to be a crime lord to catch actual crime lords in the act from inside, right? So he's a hero pretending to be a villain. And we see this quite often in comics, but it started with the Green Hornet.
You should get RT Bear to do a cover for you guys. He's a huge Green Hornet fan.
Who's that?
RT Bear.
Archie Bear, yeah, we can look into it because this is going to be far from the only Green Hornet. Joe's been doing these doubles and triples where he pairs like Green Hornet with a couple other characters, sometimes original characters. I have an original pulp character he published as well. So check it out. The QR barcode should go to the Kickstarter site, or you can go to any of our social medias and then check out Moonstone's amazing lineup of characters. It's they've got everything for your pulp needs.
Awesome.
Hey,
so to recap, go ahead.
Benny, can I share my Monster Island video?
Yeah, let's do it now. We have 29 people online.
Okay.
Let's see right now. Share on stream.
Supply and demand. People want more Graham Nolan.
Go ahead. Press play and put it on. Open it. Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Is the volume on?
I can hear it.
Okay.
Wow,
Those
wow,
are
wow,
awesome.
wow, wow.
Oh my God! Whoever did
Now-
your Kickstarter video did a great job.
Yes, he
Yeah,
did
he
a great
did.
job, no doubt about it.
The queen in that actually makes me think of a John Carter series character. There's no basis on that, is there? You know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't. I never read the John Carter stuff. I was a Tarzan guy.
There's this queen in it, and she's like, "Don't look at me. I'm so beautiful. Nobody's allowed to look at her." But she's like grotesque looking. She's like a lizard-esque kind of creature.
Oh, cool.
And so everybody like averts their eyes, and he looks at her, and she's like, wretched looking. But yeah, that's the whole thing, that she's so beautiful that nobody can look at her. But that's not the way that it is. I think that was the second or third book. It seems like I like the plant people and all kinds of stuff, but it had neat things.
All right, guys, thank you. I'm trying to recap. I'm trying to cap this off, guys.
Can I share mine?
Do
We
you have a
enough time
video?
to share mine?
Let him share his.
Okay, no problem. Go ahead.
Okay.
You're never gonna get out of here.
No, it's the cap.
Benny,
It's okay. I like. Listen, I'm
happy.
happy. Listen, I'm happy that
It's all
we
good.
have this. It's all good. It's all good.
And you
Go for
didn't
it.
even say why we're not doing it on Thursday next week.
Okay.
I don't. You want me to tell people why?
Because my wife has put up with being married to me for 10 years.
Oh, because of your
Yeah.
anniversary.
Congratulations, Mazel
Yes.
Tov.
Mazel tov, mazel tov,
Yeah.
mazel tov.
Am I good to run?
Yeah, you have to ask for share screen so I can approve it.
Oh, okay.
You
Hold
gotta
on.
press the button, share screen. It's in the middle.
Yep,
It's the
there it
one-
is.
The screen with the arrow. Let me see.
Okay, there we go. All right.
There
All
we
right.
go.
Ready?
Go for it. Yeah, I'm ready. Go for it.
Challenge for the Green Hornet, his aide Cato, and their rolling arsenal, the Black Beauty. On police records, a wanted criminal, the Green Hornet is really Britt Reed, owner-publisher of the Daily Sentinel. His dual identity known only to his secretary and to the district attorney. And now, to protect the rights and lives of decent citizens, rides the Green Hornet.
That's Matt Wagner over there.
The Green Hornet, with his stalwart partner Cato, burst onto the radio drama scene in 1936. Of the same creation team as the Lone Ranger, the Green Hornet and Cato patrolled the streets of Detroit, pretending to be master criminals in order to catch evildoers in the act. Since their debut, the mysterious duo has appeared in comics, Saturday afternoon serials, movies, and a famous 1966 TV series that starred Van Williams as Britt Reed, the Green Hornet, and introduced U.S. audiences to the legendary Bruce Lee as Cato. Moonstone Books is pleased to reveal their new anthology of Green Hornet and Cato short stories set in that TV era called Detroit Noir City. Previously, Moonstone produced 3 very successful Hornet anthologies featuring a cavalcade of amazing authors. This one will be no different. Leading the fight is the creator of Thrawn himself, Timothy Zahn, followed closely by fellow Star Wars author and Princess of Dune scribe Kevin J. Anderson. Also hitting the mean streets of Detroit are Fables creator Bill Willingham and Thundercats writer Brandon Easton. That is just the start. Moonstone has a full arsenal of rewards and stretch goals to fill the secret compartment of your Black Beauty, such as signed copies, an alternate cover, a chance to have your name immortalized in the pages of the book, and more. Don't miss this amazing opportunity to journey back to the days when justice pretended to be a supervillain and evil was undone with a swift strike to the neck. In the immortal words of the...
Very good.
Now,
Very
now
nice.
how are they immortalizing the person?
No, guys, that's it. It's done.
It's
It's
called
done.
Tuckerization. It's a reward level.
Okay.
And I
okay.
should also mention Brendan Easton did not. He ended up having to drop out for personal reasons. But yeah, it's an amazing book, guys. And yours, I'm heading over to back it right now. That looked amazing. I can't wait to check that out. So
All right, so to recap, with 34 live listeners, we do this show every Thursday night, 6:30. Next week will be Wednesday night, but everything is consistent for Thursday nights till future announcements. So just to recap, everybody, this is QR code for Mr. David Boop, and then we have also Graham Nolan, Mr. Graham Nolan's QR code here, and our good friend, Mr. B.L. Blankenship. Anyone who wants to get an interview here with our, if you're an indie comic developer and creator, just X message Mr. B.L. Blankenship, editor-in-chief of Ishook Comics.
I'm on X all the time.
And don't forget ishookcomics.com. This was a great podcast. It went literally 30 minutes over, but it's all good. It's all good. I learned a lot
It's a
from both.
bonus.
Yes,
It was a
I learned a
bonus,
lot
Jimmy.
from both guests, by the way. I am humbled and honored for them to be here. It's a big experience, and thank you so much for coming on the show.